Hello, everyone. It's Helen here with Helen. Thanks for joining me and happy spring. It may not feel like spring out there yet, but it is spring and it's around the corner. And we always know it's spring in my house when I pull out this old blouse right here. I've had this shirt for at least 10 years, and you can't just wear this shirt year round, right? Because it's bright yellow and it's got flowers all over it. My mom was in my closet one day and she was just like, Helen, you have so many shirts that have flowers on them. So she already knows when we go shopping together, I'm going to pick out the thing with flowers. I love flowers. So my shirts have flowers. My bedspread has flowers. Pictures all around my house is covered in flowers. So they bring me happiness, a lot of joy. And this is what you get. But I was looking through the closet the other day and I was just like, it's probably time to update my wardrobe. Definitely is. I mean, I've had so many things for seriously 30 years. No joke about it. One of my girlfriends was in there while she was helping me move one day and she was just like, Helen, you got to give me a couple hours so that I can go through this stuff and throw it out. But if you keep things long enough, it comes back into style, I've noticed. So if it's a ribbed turtleneck or it's this pretty flowy top, it's going to come back in style one of these years, one of these days. And I actually have sections in my closet full of my Christmas sweaters I pull out every Christmas, and then my Thanksgiving tops. And so it probably is time to give them away, but I'm having a hard time with it. I don't know. So I'm going to do a spring cleaning. I'll let you guys know how that goes. But for now, we've got the bright yellow blouse that symbolizes spring here in my household. So I just spent the morning with my mom. It was an enjoyable morning. It was so much fun. And that's what I wanted to talk about today because my mom has been suffering with COPD. So I'm not going to get into a lot about what COPD is. I'm going to let you research that, but I just want to talk about her personal experience with COPD, and it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. My mom has had it for about 13 years. I believe she was diagnosed with it in 2010. My mom did start smoking at a really young age. She lived kind of in that generation. And so, she was probably in her early teens, mid-teens when she started smoking. And she smoked all the way until her 50s, her early 50s, because the minute that my mom got diagnosed with COPD, she quit smoking. And so today I want this message to be about hope, and anybody else who has COPD, anybody else who has been in this situation. I want to inspire you and encourage you today with her story because it really is genuinely a miracle. It's an amazing story, and I hope that this will help you. So you go back to 2010, my mom ended up getting bronchitis, which ultimately ended up turning into pneumonia. She ended up in the hospital, and at that point in time, they diagnosed her with COPD. And so, none of us knew what that was, what we were going to be dealing with, how that was going to change her life. All of a sudden, we just knew that they had diagnosed her with that, and that's something that she would have. It was something that was chronic. It was something she was going to live with. Well, up until that point, my mom had been extremely healthy. No major surgeries. In fact, to this day, the only surgery that my mom has had was getting her tubes tied after she didn't want to have any more children. She's had no other major surgeries whatsoever. So super duper healthy, no underlying health issues. And then all of a sudden she gets this. Well, I believe in itself, it was almost a miracle for her because obviously at that point in time, it saved her a lot of years of life, and she did quit smoking. And so that year though, and the years to come, I would say there was probably at least a 5-6 year span, she was in and out of the hospital constantly. So even if she got the tiniest of cold, she would ultimately end up in the hospital. She would end up with bronchitis. She would end up with pneumonia. Her oxygen would drop. And so any little thing would take her down. And during these years, she was still trying to figure out how to live with COPD. So there was a lot of newness to it. Okay, what do you do? And how do you combat it? And, she had some medications at home. Obviously, they sent her home with. She was on oxygen. So that was one thing that was new to her lifestyle was oxygen. She was wearing that on a pretty regular basis. So whether we went on vacation, whether she was cleaning her home, going to the grocery store, whatever it was, she was having to use this oxygen. So right there in itself, it changed her life completely. They obviously gave her some different medications that she could use at home. However, every time that she would get sick, this was the part where we were having a hard time figuring some of this stuff out for her because she would ultimately end up in the hospital. And so it would always get to that point. Sometimes she'd be in there 2 weeks. Sometimes she'd be in there 3 weeks. At one point, she even had a nurse tell her that she was in her end of the life stage of COPD. And at that point in time, my mom was not having it. Like she would not have it. Like she was actually praying against it. She was just like, nope, God has the final say. She was praying about it. And that very day, her room ended up getting moved. They switched her out of her room and put her into a new room with a new nurse. So tell me that God doesn't listen to prayers. My mom was not having the negativity. And this wasn't something that my mom complained about, not like, get me a new nurse. This was something she prayed about. And then ultimately she ended up getting moved into a new area with a whole new set of nurses and doctors and everything, the people that were speaking life over her. And that's what she needed in the time. And so she was praying her way through it. But what we learned through this 5-6 year span also was that, okay, there are ways that we can help her from getting into the hospital, because we were always just going from point A to Z. And so we're like, okay, what can we do to keep her out of the hospital? Okay, well, what do they do while she's in the hospital? That's really what we started doing. So every time that mom gets sick, she starts taking like decongestants, like the ones over the counter. I'd have to kind of get from her exactly the ones that work, but I know that Mucinex is a good one. I know that Claritin D was a good one for her. So anytime she gets any type of like nasal drippage or anything, she needs to start taking that right away, a decongestant, so that it doesn't sit there and drip into her, like her little lungs that are sensitive, so that she doesn't get the bronchitis, she doesn't get the pneumonia. And now what they also have her do is, like, on call, they have like an antibiotic ready for her. So this way, if mom starts feeling sick or she's not feeling good, she can just call the pharmacy, or she can just show up at the pharmacy because it's already right there on hand, what they would use to treat her if she were to get some bronchitis or pneumonia. She goes and picks that up, and then she goes and picks up any other medication that they might have on hand for her that she'll need to use. So whether it's something for her nebulizer, whether it's an inhaler. And so all of that stuff is ready for her when she starts feeling sick. And then she starts doing that right away at home. So then that way it doesn't get to the point where she ends up in the hospital and they have to do all that anyways. And so it has kept her out of the hospital for several years. My mom has not been in the hospital for years. And so to go from being in there several times every year for several years to not being in there at all over the last several years will show you like how much her body has changed, how much she's healed, and obviously the grace of God in her life. Because there was a point, like I said, where we weren't exactly sure what was going to happen to her, what direction this was going to go. We've lost a lot of loved ones and friends from COPD, the same exact thing that my mom struggles with. And I genuinely believe that God is healing her lungs every single day. Those lungs are getting stronger. They are healing. If you go back to when she first was diagnosed with COPD, and like I said, there was a period of time where she couldn't go anywhere without oxygen. She was having to take those medications. She was in and out of the hospital. She was really, really struggling. And now if you see her today, you guys, she is not using oxygen. She goes to the grocery store. She travels. She gets on planes. She's been to Mexico. She's been to Florida. She goes all sorts of places. She's not on oxygen. The only time she uses it is a little bit at night while she's sleeping, because it just helps her, because her oxygen tends to go down. And then every great once in a while, if she gets a cold or she gets a flu or something like that, then she ends up putting on just a little tiny bit of oxygen to help her in that area. But other than that, all day long, she does not use oxygen anymore. And we never, ever imagined that she would even be at this point where she was able to not have it. And not, you guys, this is the craziest part. She cleans homes now. That's what she does as her job. That is her exercise. So she walks, she's active, she cleans several houses, she goes into these big homes and she sits there and cleans them, and she still has extra breath. Okay, she's not losing her breath, she has extra breath. And I do genuinely believe there's, like I said, a couple of things that have contributed to her longevity of life, because obviously, like I said, this was her early 50s. She just turned 65 in January, and she is looking amazing. She's beautiful, she's strong, she's healthy. And yes, does she still have COPD? She does. But she absolutely, like I said, as long as she is doing the preventative stuff before she gets sick. And one thing that I didn't mention was vaccines. She does get her vaccines. So whatever it is, she's really good and up to date on flu vaccines, pneumonia vaccines, shingle vaccines, COVID vaccines. So she does get those. And I do believe that those have helped her, because I know that they're not for everybody, but for her in this case with her underlying COPD, it genuinely has helped her. And so, like I said, I think the things that have, number one, contributed to her getting healthy and getting whole is the power of prayer, because she prayed her way through this every single day for the last several years. She's prayed her way through it. And I believe that God has brought healing into her body. And I also believe quitting smoking saved her life. And so hands down, had she continued to smoke, I don't believe she would probably be here with us today. I can't guarantee that, but it was not looking well for her. That was definitely something that had to be done immediately. And she did quit smoking. Okay, some of you who are probably maybe still smoking and you have COPD and you're like, I want to quit, or I've tried to quit, or I don't know how to quit. It wasn't a miracle pill for her. I'm just going to tell you right away. She literally, it was a mindset, and she didn't use any type of gum. She didn't use any type of a patch. She didn't do anything. Like I said, she prayed. And she genuinely just said, I want to live. And so what she started to do, which is instead of doing like the motion of like smoking a cigarette, the daily habit, because I mean, she wasn't just smoking a couple cigarettes a day, she was doing a couple packs a day for many, many, many years. And so obviously she had the addiction. There was the habit of like having something in your hand. There was the habit of like putting something to your mouth. And, there were so many different things. And I'm sure, I haven't been a smoker, but there was probably like things, whether it was stress related, anxiety related, different things where she would light up, or, socially related. And so for her, she got to the point where she would chew on licorice, because it was long and skinny and it kind of would go to her mouth. So it was a hand mouth thing and something that would kind of be satisfying for a minute. She started kind of, eating like suckers, like blow pops. I know that something else that like worked was like pretzel rods. She would use pretzel rods and stuff. So she always kind of had like a little something, kind of in her hand by her mouth, but little by little by little, like, I mean, genuinely, it took a while. It really did. But then you would see her have less licorice or less pretzel rods or not as many suckers. So she slowly started to get rid of that and come away from that. And now today she does not smoke and she doesn't miss it. She doesn't miss it. And, I know for the longest time, and she may even still to this day, have a pack of cigarettes in her top drawer, which is, just something I think between her and that addiction that she had had. But I think maybe there was like a level of comfort of like, well, if I ever decide to go back to smoking, so whatever the underlying thing was, it was kind of like, this will still be here. So I know for the longest of time, she had that pack of cigarettes in her top drawer, maybe with a lighter, just in case, but she never went back to it. And I'm so, so thankful and grateful that she didn't, because if you would see the quality of life that she has now, and it just really shows like the amazing power of this body and what it can do, the healing power. And even had she given up early on in her mindset, like over the first few years while she was struggling with it, in and out of the hospital, gotten hopeless, listen to even some of the nurses and doctors like, hey, you're in the final stage. And that to me in itself, because it's like, if you would see her today, like I said, she's cleaning houses, she's 65, she's thriving, she's traveling, she looks beautiful. She can do things that she hadn't done in years, certain smells and scents. And I mean, all the things that would trigger her COPD, from barbecues to smoke to candles to things like that. I mean, it's not something that she's going to sit in front of for hours and hours, but she can go to a barbecue and she can have a candle and she can have smellies in her house again. Those were all things like that would trigger her COPD. And in fact, she's even talking about painting her house this year, which is like, she'll probably have to get with some of the paint that doesn't have the fumes to it and go from there. But I mean, she may paint a room, she may paint a wall, I don't know, but it's all stuff that she never dreamt that she would be able to do again. And there was a series of years as well, like, where even if she was outside with the grass because of like allergies, and once that allergy would kick up, well, then it would cause her to have an exacerbation. The exacerbation would cause her to, get really sick, end up in the hospital. And so she was having to get seasonal allergy shots and things just to prevent that from causing this to cause her getting in the hospital. And she hasn't even had one of those, I don't think, in like 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer. And so just the transition. And so that's my message. It's just like, had she like 10 years ago been like, you know what, they said I'm in stage 4, I'm going to die anyways. I'm just going to keep smoking, or I'm going to just give up, or, this is it for me. But she refused to do that. She was just like, no, they don't have the final say. And I'm young and I'm in my 50s and I'm going to live and I'm going to give this bad habit up, even though it's going to be extremely hard. And I'm going to be an overcomer. I'm going to come off of this oxygen. I'm not going to stay on this oxygen, and I'm going to start doing things. I'm going to live my life. And then little by little, just to watch her come off of that oxygen and to watch her clean houses and to watch her just living her best life now. And I mean, genuinely, this year, I think maybe she got like a cold, a cold. Now, granted, I always joke because she completes her, I mean, she fully stays vax step. I mean, you name it, she does it. And I'm always like, wow. I don't do anything because my body's completely opposite. Literally, my body doesn't like anything foreign in it. So I'm the one who has to be like, grace of God, like if you don't help me, I have nothing, genuinely nothing. And so she's all vaxxed up. I'm not, but I'm always kind of like, wow, in awe how her body just responds to everything and how she's just staying so healthy. And like I said, this year, I think she got like a cold, like genuinely. I mean, she did have to do her round of antibiotics. And she had to do all of her normal stuff. But I mean, she bounced back. There was no hospital. There was no nothing. And God healed her right back up. And here she is today. I spent the morning with her. And I know the other day we were in the grocery store and I just sat there and something that seemed so small, but it was so significant because I watched her sit there pushing the cart and just so confident and rolling around. And I remember when she couldn't barely push the cart, when we would have to take breaks and where she would kind of turn gray and kind of turn blue and she was like, I can't breathe. And I remember that so many times, like when she would go to the hospital and the ambulance would have to come and get her and she'd be sitting there in that chair. And like, my husband was a fireman. And so sometimes him and some of the guys would have to come on these calls on her and she'd be sitting there like she couldn't even stand up. She couldn't even move. She couldn't even take a breath. Like that was it. It was just like she was going to leave us. And so that to see that and then see this, it's amazing. And that's why I'm just like, please. And I know my channel's always like, maybe sometimes people think it's like almost too full of hope. Like, really? But it's true. I'm just telling you what I've seen. I'm telling you what I've heard. I'm telling you what I've witnessed. It's true. And so I'm just so glad that I've been able to live it and see it so that I can tell you guys about it because you've seen maybe a couple videos on here on my channel where my mom's in the video where she's kind of sitting next to me or something. It's like, yep, that's my mom and she's going strong. And that God gets all the glory there, you guys. And so the difference of just making some of those lifestyle changes, not giving up hope, praising God, doing the best that you can, and then letting him do what you can't do. So anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video today. I hope it helps someone. And if you have any questions at all, on COPD, please, I mean, granted, I haven't experienced it myself, but my mom is a living testimony and she could help you in any way, shape, or form. I mean, she has lived it out, trust me. And so if you have any questions, I can ask her and I can get the answers and then I can shoot them to you in the comment section. But yeah, she would be more than happy. I mean, genuinely, she should stand on that platform and she should talk about her journey with COPD and where she's at and that there is hope. So anyways, I hope that everybody has a blessed day. Thanks again. Bye.